The blue lights hit your rearview mirror before you even realize you've done anything wrong. Your hands tighten on the steering wheel. You check your speed. Maybe you drifted a little, maybe you didn't. But now it doesn't matter. You're pulling over, heart beating just a little faster than normal, trying to remember everything you've ever heard about what to say, what not to say, and what could go wrong. The officer walks up slower than you expect, calm, watching. Not just you, but everything. Your hands, your passengers, the inside of your car, the back seat, the floor, the way you breathe. And right there, before a single word is spoken, the stop has already begun in a way most people never fully understand. Have you ever been in a situation where an officer asked you questions that didn't seem related to why you were pulled over, and you weren't sure whether answering would help you or hurt you? If you've experienced that, share it in the comments. I want to hear exactly how it went, because later in this discussion, something important is going to click into place that might completely change how you interpret those moments. Now here's where things get uncomfortable and honestly, where most people are completely unprepared. When we talk about police searching homes, most people picture a warrant, a knock at the door, maybe a dramatic scene. What they don't realize is that many of the setups for those searches begin somewhere else entirely, like right here, on the side of the road. And even more unsettling, sometimes you're not even there when it happens. Let's walk through how this actually plays out in the real world, because this isn't about conspiracy theories or dramatic TV moments. This is about small, legal, often overlooked tactics that build up piece by piece until suddenly your home becomes part of the situation. It starts with something simple. The officer asks, "Where are you coming from tonight?" Seems harmless, right? Most people answer immediately. "Just coming from a friend's house," or maybe, "coming back from work." No hesitation, no second thought. But here's what many drivers miss. That question isn't about conversation, it's about baseline behavior. Officers are trained to listen for timing, consistency, and detail. If you say you're coming from work but your clothes suggest otherwise, that's a mental note. If you hesitate, change your answer, or add unnecessary detail, that's another note. Now imagine this scenario slowly expanding. You mention you were at a friend's house. The officer casually asks, "Where does your friend live?" Again, most people answer, not because they have to, but because it feels socially uncomfortable not to. And right there, without realizing it, you've just connected a location to yourself during a police interaction. That alone doesn't mean anything, but these interactions are rarely isolated. Officers think in patterns. They build context. They remember. Now, fast forward a bit. Let's say, during that same stop, something small escalates. Maybe the officer says, "Do you mind if I take a quick look inside your vehicle?" And you hesitate. Maybe you say no. Maybe you say yes. Either way, your reaction matters more than your answer. If you say yes, you've just opened the door, literally and legally, for further observation. If you say no, that's your right, but now the officer may shift tone slightly. Not aggressively, but more focused. "Is there anything in the car I should know about?" That question isn't random. It's designed to create pressure. Silence here feels awkward. Talking feels risky. And this is where people start making small mistakes that can snowball. Now let's connect this to something most drivers never think about. Information gathered during a traffic stop doesn't just stay in that moment. It can be used later to justify further investigation. That includes surveillance, follow-up visits, or even attempts to establish probable cause tied to a location, like your home. And here's where things get more strategic from the officer's perspective. Let's say during your interaction you casually mention you're heading home. Maybe you even confirm your address when asked for ID or registration. Completely normal, completely routine. But now your home is no longer just an address in a database. It's a place connected to your behavior, your statements, your reactions during a live encounter. And if anything during that stop raises suspicion, even slightly, that address can become relevant in ways you didn't anticipate. Now, to be clear, Officers cannot just decide to search your home because they feel like it. There are legal boundaries. But what often surprises people is how those boundaries are navigated. One common tactic isn't direct force, it's indirect access. For example, officers may return to your home later when you're not there and attempt what's called a knock and talk. That sounds polite, and sometimes it is, but the goal is strategic. If someone else answers, roommate, spouse, family member, the officer may ask for consent to enter. And here's the key detail many people overlook. Consent doesn't always have to come from you. If someone with authority over the property says yes, the dynamic changes completely. Now think about that for a second. A conversation that started on the side of the road, simple questions, casual answers, can eventually lead to officers standing at your front door when you're not even present to respond. And it doesn't always stop there. Another approach involves observation over time. Let's say your vehicle is seen coming and going from your residence multiple times. Maybe after a traffic stop, officers decide to pay a bit more attention. Not full surveillance in a dramatic sense, but periodic observation. Patterns start to form. Who comes and goes? When? How often? Then something small happens again. Maybe another stop. Maybe another interaction. And each time, more context is added. This is where people underestimate how much their behavior matters, not just legally, but psychologically. Officers are trained to notice inconsistencies. If your story changes across interactions even slightly, that can raise questions. Not accusations, just questions. And questions are often the starting point for deeper investigation. Now let's shift back to the roadside for a moment, because this is where many of these threads begin. You're still standing outside your car. The officer has your license. They've been holding it a little longer than expected. Not excessively, but just long enough to make you uneasy. Why? Because time creates pressure. The longer you wait, the more likely you are to start talking, filling silence, offering information that wasn't requested. Everything okay, officer? Seems like a harmless question, but now you've reopened the conversation. And the officer might respond with something like, just trying to figure out what's going on tonight. That's vague on purpose. Now you're thinking, what does he mean by that? Did I do something? Should I explain more? And right there, that internal pressure, is where people start volunteering details. I mean, I just came from my cousin's place. We were just hanging out. Nothing crazy. Now think about what just happened. No one asked for that level of detail. But it was given freely. And every piece of information adds to the overall picture. Now let's talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Tone shifts. An officer may start off relaxed, almost friendly, then, without warning, become more direct. Step out of the vehicle for me. That change catches people off guard. It creates a moment of uncertainty, and during that moment, people often become more compliant than they intended to be. Standing outside your car feels different, more exposed, more vulnerable. You're no longer in control of your space. Now the questions might continue. Do you have anything illegal at your residence? That question feels like it came out of nowhere, but it didn't. It's connected to everything you've said so far, everything the officer has observed. And here's where people make a critical mistake. They assume that because the stop is about driving, questions about their home don't matter. They matter more than you think, because once your home enters the conversation, it becomes part of the narrative being built. Now let's address a subtle but powerful tactic: repetition. An officer might ask the same question in slightly different ways. Where were you earlier? Then later, you said you were at a friend's house, right? Then again, how long were you there? Each time, they're checking for consistency, not just in your words, but in your tone, your timing, your body language. And if anything shifts, even slightly, it can create doubt. Not proof, not evidence, but doubt. And in law enforcement, doubt often leads to more questions, more observation, and sometimes more action. Now imagine this scenario expanding beyond that single stop. Let's say nothing happens immediately. You're eventually let go, maybe even with a warning. You drive away thinking, that wasn't so bad. But what you don't see is what happens after. Notes may be written, observations recorded, not dramatic, just factual. Time, location, behavior, statements. And if your name or vehicle comes up again later, those details can resurface. Now here's where things start to connect in ways most people never expect. If officers believe there's enough reason to investigate further, they may seek additional information through other means. That could involve surveillance, informants, or corroborating details from other interactions. And eventually, if enough pieces align, that information can be used to support a request for a warrant. Not based on one thing, but on a collection of small things. This is why understanding how these interactions work is so important, because it's not about being paranoid, it's about being aware. Now let's talk about a situation that catches a lot of people off guard. You're not home. Maybe you're at work. Maybe you're out with friends. Officers show up at your residence. They knock. Someone answers. "Hey, we just have a few questions. Mind if we come in for a minute?" That phrasing matters. It feels casual, non-threatening. But if the person at the door says yes, everything changes. Now the officers are inside, observing, not searching in the traditional sense, but noticing what's in plain view, what stands out, what connects to prior information. And plain view is one of those concepts that people misunderstand all the time. If something is visible while officers are lawfully present, it can be used in ways that extend far beyond that moment. Now think back to that traffic stop, the questions, the answers, the small details. They don't disappear, they build. And sometimes they lead right back to your front door when you're not even there to see it happening. So when you're sitting in your car, blue lights behind you, and an officer starts asking questions that feel unrelated, it's worth asking yourself, why this question, and why now? Because the stop in front of you might not just be about the moment you're in, it might be the beginning of something you haven't even considered yet. And the difference between a routine interaction and something more serious often comes down to small decisions. What you say, what you don't say, how you react, and whether you understand what's really happening beneath the surface. That silence you feel during a stop, it's not empty. It's where the situation is quietly taking shape.